special counsel confirmed that the Russian government sponsored efforts to illegally interfere with the 2016 presidential election, but did not find that the Trump campaign or other Americans colluded in those efforts.
I'm having a good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction. There never was, by the way, and there never will be.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
All right, happy Monday. We're glad you are with us. Hope you had a great Passover and also a great Easter weekend and family and friends and whatever you like to do. We hope you got it all in. Terrible bombings in Sri Lanka over the weekend. Nearly 300 people killed. We'll have a full report coming up later in the program. You have bombs tearing apart 3 separate churches, 3 separate hotels, another explosion at a housing complex. I think they found 84 detonators at a particular bus stop that had not been finished. And we know nearly 300 killed, among them at least 4 U.S. citizens, 24 people in Sri Lanka in custody. And the attacks appear to have been carried out by suicide bombers with a network of radical terror. And officials have suggested that there was some advanced terror plot. Intelligence may have ignored it. That's never good. Never. I mean, what was the lesson of 9/11? You have the Kenya, Tanzania, the first Trade Center bombing, the USS Cole, the conclusion of the 9/11 report. I didn't agree with everything. They were at war with us. We were not at war with them. You know, yeah, we beat back the caliphate in Iraq and Syria. Remember, we've taken back all the territory that they had gained, every single bit of it. But radical Islamic terror is a threat, you know, and it manifests in many groups, different forms. And Al-Qaeda, obviously one, ISIS, then you've got, you know, Hezbollah, Hamas, you know, radical Islam, Muslim Brotherhood, all these groups that buy into this twisted, sick, you know, ideology that believes convert or die, or strapping bombs in some cases, even on your own children to advance the caliphate, and telling your own kids that they'll be rewarded in heaven. It's insane. You know, and the hard part is when you see moments like this unfolding, you know, good people have a hard time wrapping their minds around evil. You know, look at communism, look at the former Soviet Union, Stalin, look at fascism, look at Nazism, Imperial Japan. The cost, the human toll. The last century was about 100 million human souls killed as a result of extremism. You know, my biggest fear, keep me up at night, is radical Islamists with a nuclear weapon. That is a powder keg we cannot deal with. And if you marry that sick ideology, those who have perverted their religious beliefs, that evil that they embrace, if those radicals get a hold of that weapon, what would make you think it would stop them from using it? Especially, those, look at the mullahs in Iran, stated goal, wiping Israel off the map. There's a reason why even the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Emirates, and others have aligned with Israel and the United States, because they fear that nightmare, that Iranian hegemony, those radical mullahs. It's sad to think of the $150 billion in cash and other currency being dumped on the tarmacs for those mullahs. By the way, Joe Biden, good luck explaining that if you're going to get in this week. I watched this weekend. I really kept distant from it because I was off TV Friday night, and I just, every time I'd read some coverage, see what was going on, it's like these people on the left, we've discussed this rage, this psychosis, this mass psychosis, and it is fully and completely and utterly consumed the Democratic Party. The party now finds itself in conflict. You have those that, and we've got all the articles here we're going to get to in the course of the program. Mark Penn, by the way, wrote a great article. Mueller's done. Democrats should be too. Trump is not Nixon. But of course, Mueller and his merry band of Democratic donors, you look at part 2 on the obstruction, why he didn't make a decision. He's basically saying, here, if you want to impeach him, go ahead. We don't like him anyway. Well, if anyone cared about obstruction, how do you not mention the name Hillary Clinton? The double standard is so flagrant. You have an underlying crime. There was no underlying crime for Donald Trump. He was screaming his innocence. He was, as Trey Gowdy said, if you're innocent, act like an innocent person would act. I think most innocent people would declare their innocence. And the idea that the president, who had all the authority legally to remove Mueller and remove Rod Rosenstein and make the changes and stop the investigation, it would have politically been disastrous, but he had the power to do it. He did not. Proclaiming your frustration with a witch hunt when you can only say so many ways, we found no evidence of collusion, which is what the Mueller report said again and again. But that still doesn't stop them. Hillary had an underlying crime. She even warned the State Department staff underneath her when she was Secretary of State. She said, don't use private email for work-related things exactly. Like, top secret, classified information. Well, that's what that private server was about. Her top aides all knew about it. Barack Obama knew about it. Because when we found out the high-ranking official that had emailed her, one was Barack Obama. And classified, top secret, special access programming information. All on there. And then you have the intent. What was the intent of the deletions of subpoenaed emails and bleach bit acid wash of the hard drives and the destruction of BlackBerries and iPhones with hammers and removing SIM cards? The intent was to get rid of the evidence that confirmed the underlying crime. None of these people in the media, none of these Democrats that are out there on television all weekend, we may pursue impeachment against Donald Trump. The Adam Cowardly Schiff, just makes it up, lies with abandon. I've never seen a greater liar than this guy. What part of there's no collusion didn't he understand? But he'd been out there preaching forever that it's there. Listen, it's over. They lost. They didn't get what, for example, television, these networks lied over and over and over and over again for 2+ years. They created an expectation in their audience, an excitement even. We're going to get them. We're going to get them. Now they're trying to after they've deflated everybody because all their hope was in the Mueller report. And then when it didn't happen, maybe the House will do it. That's what we need. Maxine Waters, we have enough information from the Mueller report to move forward with impeachment. Elijah Cummings, if we do nothing after the Mueller report, Trump is going to be emboldened. They had a conspiracy TV. I saw this on Mediaite over the weekend. Panel actually debating the strategy on impeachment now. It would be a mistake to start it right away. In other words, it'll be clearly politically transparent. Let's just wait a little while, then we'll dive back in again. Or one host on MSNBC just ripping into a congressman for not wanting to impeach Trump. This is beyond psychosis. And the few Democrats like Mark Penn that say, you should be done. No collusion, no obstruction. They did lose. It's like for them, I told you this last week. It's like election night all over again. They got so jacked up and pumped up when they saw those exit polls at 5:15 on election night 2016. Those polls were dead wrong like they were in 2004. And I think if there's one politician in the country that is somebody you really can't poll accurately, it's Donald Trump. And the idea that people went in and said, screw you people. I voted for Hillary. They come out and damn, who'd you vote for? Hillary. They know people now are so hip to the media bias. They're messing with them. You know, the idea that we are viewed as smelly Walmart people, irredeemable deplorables, cling to God, our Bibles, our guns, our religion. That's how these elitists think. They thought in the deep state that they knew better than us, we, the people. And that's why, you know, I got into a huge Twitter fight this weekend. There was some article that came out by the Daily Beast. Oh, some Russia TV show was using Hannity's monologue on the Mueller report on Russian television. I'm like, okay, this is, you know, I'm like, really? Do I have to now delve into this? Anyway, I tweeted out, I don't actually have access to Twitter anymore or any social media. I haven't for a long time. And I just went at them. You know, maybe they should have included my numerous comments about Russia being a hostile regime, Putin a hostile bad actor, how dangerous he is to our country. Then I tweeted about, well, Devin Nunes, if Obama, it all happened on his watch, had paid attention. Devin Nunes warned about all of this happening in the 2016 election back in 2014. And of course, they didn't lift a finger to help on the Devin Nunes warning. And he knew they did nothing to prevent it. How many times has the hate Trump media mob lied to you, the American people? Russia, 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 collusion, collusion, collusion. You know, what about the FISA? You know, first of all, we now know the investigation into Hillary is rigged. That's part one. We've got to go back to it. Then we know the phony Russian dossier was never verified and unverifiable. And everybody now knew, we found out from Bruce Orr's testimony that he warned everybody. Steele hates Trump. Hillary paid for it. It's not verified. But still it becomes the bulk of information in 4 separate FISA application warrants. Well, those warrants denied a fellow American his constitutional rights, gave Obama's government and Hillary's campaign yet another path to spy on the Trump campaign beyond Stefan Halper, who was charged to go after Page, Clovis, and Papadopoulos. By the way, you think the media is ever going to admit and be honest and introspective and self-reflective and admit they're wrong and retract? You know, no. They're going to jump on the next 16-year-old kid with a MAGA hat like they did Nicholas Sandmann at Covington High School. They'll double down on slander and besmirchment. I love how they just cherry pick your comments. You know, maybe this media mob can apologize to the American people for the 2+ years of lies and conspiracy theories. Maybe they can finally look into Hillary's rigged investigation. If they care so much about obstruction, why did she delete 33,000 subpoenaed emails, bleach bit, deletions, hammers? You ever going to ask that? Are you ever going to ask about the lying Russian dossier that was spread to the Washington Post and elsewhere? You know, full of lies, used as a FISA application to get into the Trump campaign. This fake news industrial complex in America, they're no better than Russia propaganda.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take a second to hear the immortal Bob Grant's thoughts about the world today.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's sick, and it's getting sicker.
Now, back to the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, 25 till the top of the hour. Glad you're with us. 800-941-SEAN, if you want to be a part of the program. Anyway, the declassification we expect, here's where the psychosis runs even deeper than I think anybody ever thought. Because it's not only that the media, the Democrats, they bought it all hook, line, and sinker, but when did they know? You know, when did they know? For example, one question I have is, now that Mueller's declared there's no collusion, no collusion, no collusion, no Russia collusion, no evidence of any collusion of any American with Russia. And then we have all the process crimes, and rightly so, I would assume, the indictment of these bot companies, whoever these people are, and these Russian intelligence figures. I know they're important, identifying them, but we're never going to get them extradited to the U.S. because they're the people that was actually responsible for trying to create election chaos, etc. And, you know, the fact that Ukraine is now offering America an admission that they too meddled in our election, and they're saying we meddled on behalf of Hillary Clinton and we're willing to give you all the evidence. And there's not one person, just like with the Hillary Clinton, you know, whole case of obstruction. They all care about obstruction, but not her deletions and her bleach bit and her hammers on subpoenaed 33,000 emails. They don't care about that. They care about bludgeoning Justice Kavanaugh, but they couldn't give a rip about believing those that accused the lieutenant governor of Virginia of rape and violent sexual assault. This is all selective moral outrage. And, you know, yeah, so they're just trying to figure out what they're going to do next. How are they going to deal with this? And the radicals that have now taken over the Democratic Party, that this is what they want. And they feel that, well, I think Mueller's, if you really pay attention, he's given us a roadmap to impeachment, which, by the way, I mean, Levin was right when he was on Thursday night. This is a roadmap. This is a political document, especially the obstruction stuff. You see, if some prosecutors, if they decide, which Mueller even did, and that's why it took Rosenstein, the Office of Legal Counsel, the Attorney General Barr, basically seconds, because also they were in contact with the special counsel's office the whole time. But the fact that, you know, if you don't have the evidence, if it doesn't rise to the level of indictment, even though maybe, you know, some things are a little whatever, usually you never release the information at all, unless you're going to indict somebody. And it is a political document that is never, but it's, you know, Democrats are hoping to use it as a roadmap to impeachment. And if they can't get that, well, this is the whole issue. Well, we got plan B. Let's go after everything Trump related. And you have House Democrats demanding every tax return, charging it with abuse of power. And let's get every bit of financial information on the Trumps we can. Then we're going to go back that way. And we'll try to impeach him that way. Well, finally, I mean, after what is the highest level of cooperation we've ever seen, 1.5 million documents handed over to Mueller. The president not one time ever invoked executive privilege. Now, Obama did for Eric Holder in Fast and Furious, and on a number of occasions. Clinton did as well. Trump never did. Even the most insane thing in this to me is, why was Don McGahn allowed 30 hours before Mueller? That's the White House counsel. There has to be some privilege somewhere for somebody. And attorneys for the president, after this cooperation and exoneration, you know, now the president's lawyers rightly looking at what is a fishing expedition and witch hunt to harass a sitting president, have basically now they're suing back the partisan House Democrats, demanding everything business Trump. And attorneys for the president, it'd be like, oh, let's use the IRS to get information. Now we're subpoenaing their IRS to give us Trump's records. Oh, you want to empower the IRS to go after political opponents? Really? This has gotten this derangement. There's no constitutional basis for it, but more importantly, there's nobody that is able to get a grip in the Democratic Party or the media to saying, wow. I mean, you have somebody like Mark Penn who will join us later, and somebody like Alan Dershowitz. Hello, we're a party that believes in civil liberties somewhere, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so the attorneys for the president filed a lawsuit today that seeks to block all these subpoenas by Elijah Cummings and Nadler's committee and Maxine Waters and Schiff's committee and this secret memorandum of understanding with Congressman Cummings and the cowardly Schiff and Gerald Nadler. And it was filed in federal court. And, you know, Cummings is saying that, well, they have ignored the constitutional limits on Congress' power to investigate. You don't get to go on fishing expeditions by ordering the IRS to turn over any citizen's tax information. Why? Because they're going to fish through it and find, now we got them. And when are they ever going to think of the American people in this? What has this group of Democrats ever put forward to lower prescription drug costs, like our friend Dr. Josh Umber, or to fix the disaster where millions lost their doctors, their plans, and were promised they'll save money? Everybody pays more. Millions lost doctors and plans. Some people have one choice in many cities and towns in this country. You've got, let's look at the scorecard. This was in The Guardian. Elizabeth Warren tweeting out, I read the Mueller report. When I got to the end, I realized this is a point of principle. The severity of this misconduct demands that elected officials in both parties set aside political considerations and do their constitutional duty. All right. She wants to outflank everybody else that's running for president. And she followed, Robert Francis Beto Bozo, who was for impeachment before he was against impeachment. But now he's back for impeachment. Sort of like Kamala Harris. She's for Medicare for all, but no private insurance. Wait, I might support private insurance. No, I'm going to stick with no private insurance. They're literally flailing, but especially in their attempts to destroy this president. O'Rourke saying over the weekend, a Senate campaign, that he would vote to impeach Trump. Or recently, said, well, maybe it's not a good idea. Even Schiff was like, well, I'm not sure if it's not good for the American people. The American people have November of 2020 is coming. They can decide then. I'll get into this later, but we have this mayor, you think of the new Green Deal plan? Really? We're going to retrofit every house in America, eliminate oil and gas. Our oil and gas is literally the ticket whereby every American can dramatically raise their wealth and their standard of living. Every single American can profit and benefit financially from the energy and gas resources that fuel the entire world, because we've got more of it than anybody else. We're now energy independent, and we are a net exporter of energy. You get these pipelines on target and flowing. You get you get our oil companies and Anwar. You get all this natural gas, and we are going to be a very wealthy country. Literally millions of career-paying life jobs for people. As we've experienced before. We just need to go full bore, which this president's doing, but the Democrats' plan is no more oil and gas, no more combustion engine, but we'll create charging stations. Everything is free, Medicare for all, daycare because we'll have a wealth tax, and then we'll get rid of cows and planes before it's all done. Good luck getting to Europe or Asia or New Zealand. Mayor Comrade de Blasio, we'll get to this later, but he's announcing a ban on skyscrapers and retrofitting every big building in New York. This is insane. His version, and doing it within 5 years. He's have strong mandates. The biggest source of emissions in New York City is buildings. And he wants buildings that will reduce emissions. And if they don't get it done by 2030, we just built the Freedom Tower. We got to get rid of all the glass and all the steel in the Freedom Tower. We're going to ban classic glass and steel skybreakers, which are incredibly inefficient. What are we going to use? Sticks? No, I can't use them. That would cut down a tree. By the way, Congresswoman Omar says laws against drugs are racist. This is another extreme part of the party. Matt Gaetz actually went on the record. I read his comments in the Washington Examiner today over the weekend that there may be an element of bribery behind the cozy relationship with the fake, fraudulent, obsessed media and the Obama FBI. We're going to watch. Listen, Obama's up to his eyeballs in this deep state stuff. It's not if, it's when all of this is coming out. There's nothing. I'm just telling you, just sit back and watch how wrong they all were, how obsessed they were. You know, the New York Times still testified that his dossier might have been fabricated by Russia. This is pretty funny. Based on previously unreported testimony from Steele, New York Times had to report today that Steele's Trump dossier, which Hillary paid for, which Obama's FBI used to justify spying on the Trump campaign, was likely Russian disinformation. You think? Which would mean the same dossier that was bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign, which means Hillary Clinton may have bankrolled a Russian disinformation campaign to try and rig the 2016 election. It's always going to come down to this. It's not that hard and it's not that complicated. And whether they like it or not, it's all going to happen. And I'm telling you that we're going to get to the bottom of all this, and all this information is going to come out, and the American people are going to open their eyes and say, oh my God, how did this possibly happen in the United States of America? And by the way, Joe Biden is up to his eyeballs. All of this happened on his and Obama's watch. The Attorney General was Obama and Biden's. What I want to know is, when did the special counsel's office know the truth about Russia collusion? When did they know? Why did Mueller wait to answer the collusion question? Michael Mukasey made this observation. I think it's a great question. He was a former federal judge and the AG under George W. Bush. He was on with my buddy Bill Hemmer at Fox and asked why Mueller did not reveal the most important piece of information uncovered until he submitted his report to William Barr. When did Mueller know? When did the people who work for him know that there was no coordination? Because they should have closed up shop and stopped with the process crimes at that point. When did they realize that big question? And whenever they realized it, should have been, why weren't we told? Why hold it back? Well, you have the 18 Democrats that wanted to get to the, there's no underlying crime. This whole thing is a political witch hunt. President was right. No collusion. None. Why didn't they reveal it before the midterms? Even a liberal reporter tells his colleague, get off the Russia collusion crack pipe. Where did I see that? On townhall.com. I mean, the whole summary here, it's, I don't know who said it. I just read the headline. It's pretty funny. The New York Post, we'll do this tonight. We have a number of top 10 lists tonight. What are the top 10 most unanswered questions? What are the top 10 documents we need? What are the top 10 epic media fails? Byron York had a funny piece. For some Democrats, breaking up with the dossier is hard to do. There's a lot of truth in that, too. My buddy Rowan Scarborough over at the Washington Times that Steele made a dozen conspiracy charges against Trump. Robert Mueller's report debunks the Russian dossier. He had a great article about that out there. One former CIA analyst, U.S. intelligence may be biased towards Democrats, you think? And Schiff, the cowardly liar, is literally saying, everything I said is proven. Just the opposite happened. Where is he? What alternate reality is this guy living in? It does make you wonder. All right, 800-941-SEAN. Listen, I can't start a day without the Black Rifle Coffee Company. I just can't. And I don't know what to say. I mean, so I've tasted all the other coffee out there, tried everything available. Yeah, I've been to the liberal coffee shops and I'm rolling my eyes. But then I tried Black Rifle Coffee. Now, this was created by heroes when they were actually fighting for their country and they didn't like the government coffee. So they started importing beans and experimenting. And they literally have found the single best roast to order coffee. They'll deliver it right to your door. It is guaranteed fresh premium coffee, the best you've ever had. And now I can't start my day without it. I'll admit it. I'm addicted. I love it. And the fact you can join their coffee club, it makes it easy. You get special discounts. Whatever blend you particularly want. I like the strongest coffee possible. Black, please. That's it. No milk, no sugar. Anyway, they also give money back to first responders and vets and vet causes. They hire vets and first responders. Not only are you helping a great cause, you're getting the best cup of coffee you ever had. Anyway, if you want the best coffee in America, go to blackriflecoffee.com/Sean. You're going to get 20% off your first order. blackriflecoffee.com/Sean. And you're going to love their crazy website with their videos. They're off the hook funny. Straight ahead.
Bad for America. Great for mainstream media fake news edits. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
The special counsel confirmed that the Russian government sponsored efforts to illegally interfere with the 2016 presidential election, but did not find that the Trump campaign or other Americans colluded in those efforts.
I'm having a good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction. There never was, by the way, and there never will be.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
When did President Trump say, hey, go out there and fire Mueller?
He never did. You know, I was there at the same time that the report says that, McGahn mentioned this. And I was assigned to deal with Mueller. And I briefed the president every day. And every week I saw Mueller or quarrels for 8 months.
Right.
At no time did the president ever say, John, I'm going to get rid of him. John is not going to do it. It was just the opposite. Here's the message the president had for Bob Mueller, to me, to carry. 1, you tell him I respect what he's doing. Number 2, you tell him he's got my full cooperation. Number 3, get it done as quickly as possible. And number 4, whatever else you need, let me know. And that was always the message, and that's exactly what we did.
You once described to me on this program that the Trump administration's actions related to the Russia probe are, quote, of a size and scope probably beyond Watergate. What do you say now?
Well, I think it's clear from the Mueller report that that's exactly right. The obstruction of justice in particular in this case is far worse than anything that Richard Nixon did. The break-in by the Russians of the democratic institutions, a foreign adversary, far more significant than the plumbers breaking into the Democratic headquarters. So, yes, I would say in every way this is more significant than Watergate. And the fact that a candidate for president and now a president of the United States would not only not stand up and resist Russian interference in our election, but would welcome it, goes well beyond anything Nixon did. The fact that the President of the United States would take Putin's side over his own intelligence agencies go well beyond anything Richard Nixon did. So, yes, I think it is far more serious than Watergate.
Yeah, of course. He's been saying that just like he's been saying, I have all the evidence of collusion and it doesn't exist. I mean, it's really, when you have 4 separate investigations that have all concluded the same thing, how many more times do I have to go back to this Mueller report and read no collusion? Just like the FBI, Strzok and Page, no collusion, a 9-month investigation, although it might have even started earlier, which we're doing a deep dive into even as we speak. And they cannot help themselves. It is a level of rage, hatred, and psychosis. You know, the big question now is the left-wing radicals of the Democratic Party, are they going to override any bit of common sense? You have the Nunes House Intel report, the bipartisan Senate committee report, the FBI report, and the Mueller report. Clearly, no collusion, no obstruction. It doesn't matter. And then we want your taxes. Tell me where any of this is good for the American people. What are they doing to serve their constituents? This is not service. And the biggest liar of them all is, Adam the Cowardly Schiff. And it's like the media cannot give up the addiction that they have. Anyway, John Solomon is with us, investigative reporter, executive vice president of The Hill, on the latest on the probe. John has given me a little bit of a preview. We'll have more details on this tonight. I don't know how much you can give me, but like we're doing on this program in our own way, you in your own way, you want really specific things answered. And if we don't answer them and we don't solve the underlying causes, we are risking a system of justice that really is not predicated on our Constitution any longer. It's a dual system of justice, no equal justice under the law or application of our laws, and those that abuse power must be held accountable. We're on the same page on that.
Yeah, listen, I think the American public's on the same page as well. This concern about dual justice and hijacking of the intelligence and law enforcement community for political purposes is becoming more rooted in the American conscience now that the Mueller report is out. I think the most interesting thing I've heard the last 5 or 6 days, and it was in my column this morning, Sean, is that a growing number of intel people that I'm talking to are beginning to say we may have had the assessment wrong, that when we said that Russia was trying to help Donald Trump and hurt Hillary Clinton, it may not be that clear. In fact, a lot of people look at the facts that Mueller has put in the report and said, instead of a collusion strategy, it looks like Vladimir Putin was doing what is known in the spy tradecraft as a discoverable influence operation. What does that mean? In layman's terms, it means he was set up. It was a setup. It was designed to be detected so that people would then question Donald Trump, a sort of the intelligence equivalent of framing someone. So to hear that, and one of the people who said that's Daniel Hoffman, the former CIA station chief in Moscow. If anyone knows Russian spycraft, it's Daniel Hoffman. When you start to hear the intelligence community talk that way, you realize how wrong the early assessments were and all the early reporting in my industry was, and how much there's a welcoming of a fresh review of all of these conclusions.
When are we talking about going back as far as what?
You know, I think you have to begin to take a look at the period that begins in December 2015. If, as a lot of the facts seem to suggest, this was a political operation, a political Oppo research operation designed to create a breadcrumb trail that the FBI would bite on and then go after Donald Trump. The first key moment seems to occur around December 2015 when, as I previously reported last year, Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele, soon to become the Oppo researcher of the Clinton campaign, start talking about trying to get dirt on Paul Manafort through a Russian connection they know as Oleg Deripaska, one of the oligarchs they were targeting. From that point forward, I believe over the next few weeks and months, we will be able to track a series of events where you can see the Democrats working with foreign powers, foreign people, let me interrupt you because I think I know what you're saying. In other words, that we might have very high level people within, say, the intelligence community that were farming out things to other allied countries that would be illegal for them themselves to do. Exactly. I think that's going to be one of the predominant questions. Did we ask the foreigners to do what our law prevented us from doing against American citizens like Trump or any of his advisors? I think that's one piece of it. I think a second piece of it is the Democrats, the Justice Department under Democratic control, State Department under Democratic control, the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton campaign. Did they work with foreign powers to get information? We have some pretty strong hints of it, right? We know that Christopher Steele and Bruce Orr are targeting a Russian, Oleg Deripaska. We know Christopher Steele got the majority of his information from a former Russian intelligence officer, which, by the way, doesn't exist. When you're in the Russian intelligence, you never leave. And then we know that there were these contacts with the Ukrainian embassy that Politico wrote about in 2017. I think we're going to be able to fill in a lot of gaps between those different points and show a much more robust effort by Democrats and the Democratic administration to work with foreigners to get dirt on Donald Trump.
You go through tonight, and I don't want to give away your story tonight, because we're going to break it on Hannity to the extent that you and I have talked. I'm going from memory here.
Sure.
But, Mr. Editor, tear down these false and unproven Russia collusion stories, which is all true. But you go into very specific detail about very specific instances that there was an epic fail at the media. Now, we have cable TV. That's one aspect of it. The Washington Post, the New York Times is an aspect of it. The other tales about Carter Page and Manafort, Assange, and BuzzFeed's unfounded scoop on the Trump Tower of Moscow project, et cetera, or, Michael Cohen in Prague, or, McClatchy, who got so much wrong in all of this.
Yep. You're right. I go back to a very important point in journalism. I remembered 1998. That's the day that the Wall Street Journal broke a story about Bill Clinton that turned out, and Monica Lewinsky, that turned out to be false. And they did the right thing. They did the wrong reporting, but when they were called on it, they retracted it. What we've seen my industry do these last few years as overt obvious information has come out that contradict or debunk a story. Instead of correcting and retracting the story, they're just doing appendages, things that people won't notice. So add a little bit, Bob Mueller says he doesn't agree with our assessment. Well, in the old days, we used to call that story wrong, and we would retract it. And I think the discussion I'd like to have in my own profession is, what are the stories that should be retracted? Because they're either demonstrably false or now, 2 years in, can't be proven. That standard used to be the standard by which we retracted stories. And I think we'll be able to talk tonight about a whole bunch of those stories that don't meet the test of journalism accuracy, journalism ethics. And I think there's a good discussion for the American people to demand that our industry fix and retract these stories.
You know, it is an amazing thing. I got I stay off Twitter now. I don't even have access to my accounts. Either Linda or my TV staff tweets out everything. And I went through a series of tweets this weekend after there was this ridiculous report by the, absolutely hardline left wing, Daily Beast. And we just got into it because there's so much that they have gotten wrong from the very beginning on all of this. Yeah. And, it was time for somebody to call them out. I called them lazy, overpaid, propagandists, false, politically driven coverage. Yeah. The media mob is likely lost all credibility forever. I made a list of everything that they have been wrong about in terms of going through the list of Smollett, starting with, for example, Richard Jewell and straight on through right. Nicholas Sandmann and Cambridge and police and Duke Lacrosse, UVA, Ferguson, Baltimore, vetting Obama. They were, or Kavanaugh, I believe, versus the Virginia lieutenant governor. They've got it all wrong, and they never are held accountable.
Yeah, we need a moment in our profession, and I say this as someone that still reveres the profession and still believes it can do good things in the world, that we need to have an inflection point to acknowledge where we've gotten off the rails. There was a quote back from 1998 that journalism expert said at the time, which is, the danger of scandals is that you get so emotionally invested in them that you mistake a bullet for an atom bomb. And I think that a lot of what happened here in the intelligence world.
Hey, John, with all due respect, you're being very kind and gracious. They always get it wrong.
Well, I can think of times where the profession got it right. I know.
Well, okay, but hang on. Think of the extent on Donald Trump. Everything is wrong. They loved Obama. They hated Trump. And they acted as such. And are there exceptions to the rules? Sure. Cheryl Atkinson is an exception. Sure. You're an exception. But generally speaking, they are hardline left that now has gone so over to the other side. They, there's an indignation that they cannot admit or retract and apologize. As you said, hell will freeze over, John. It's never going to happen.
It may, and that will be an unfortunate thing, because I think we have to fix ourselves as an industry.
Journalism's dead, except for the few people that really care about truth.
Yeah.
And it's not by accident that I have a track record that I'm right almost all the time when they're wrong. And the same with you. And
the key is to stick to the facts. And I think so much emotion and politics have gotten into the profession that it clouds the judgment of editors and of.
Oh, you think?
Yeah. And
all right, stay right there. John Solomon is with us, investigative reporter. He'll be on Hannity tonight. Look, let's say you had to email something really important, very private, maybe a tax document with your social security number on it, financial information. Let me ask you, would you ever use a postcard that anybody can read? Well, let's say you're using public Wi-Fi. Maybe it's even password protected. Well, it's the same as using a postcard. When you really need a sealed envelope, otherwise you will be exposing sensitive private information to cyber criminals and companies that will use that information for nefarious purposes. That's why in this day and age, you need to spend $3.33 a month. You need Norton Secure Virtual Private Network, a VPN. Now, it encrypts all your connections, public, Wi-Fi, so the information you're sending and receiving is safe from all cyber criminals who want to steal your private information, or companies that want to track your browsing activities, app usage, location. Now, you can use Norton Secure VPN with either your laptop, your mobile device, whether you're sending or receiving information. It's all encrypted, your information, making it unusable to anyone who's trying to watch your activity. Norton Secure VPN. It blocks companies from tracking you online, blocks annoying ads coming into your email and text, etc. Now, this is from Norton. They're the best. That's the bottom line. With your annual subscription, it's only $3.33 a month. And think of the security and safety and the importance in this day and age when somebody's a victim of identity theft every 2 seconds. Just go very simply to norton.com/VPN. Norton.com/VPN, the cyber protection you need in this day and age.
One thing we've always known about Hannity, he stands up for what he believes in and what you believe in. Follow Hannity as he fights the left who are trying to extinguish conservative voices. Sean Hannity. Check out Sean live every weekday from 3 to 6 Eastern here on iHeartRadio.
Home sales might be back to their downward trend after a huge spike up in February. Sales of existing homes dropped about 5% in March, and the Realtors Association says they were 5.5% lower than March of last year. The association's chief economist says the market is underperforming its potential considering lower interest rates, but low inventory is still driving up prices, and it's taking about 3 months longer to sell a house on average than a year ago. The United States is ending its waiver of sanctions on countries that buy oil from Iran, and that's driving up oil prices even more. Correspondent Bill Zimfer with the latest.
The Trump administration granted waivers to China, India, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Turkey, Italy, and Greece after reimposing sanctions on Iranian oil exports last November. Now those waivers are ending in early May. It remains to be seen how those countries, in particular China, will react. China is the number one buyer of oil from Iran. Meanwhile, world oil prices are up on the news to their highest level since last year. Bill Zimfer, NBC News Radio.
Boeing is now facing allegations it has done a shoddy job building its 787 Dreamliners at its Charleston, South Carolina factory. A New York Times investigation details complaints about all kinds of debris workers left behind. One example, says retired Boeing quality manager John Barnett, metal shavings that were left dangling over crucial wiring inside planes, creating a safety issue.
Is over time, these metal shavings are going to migrate down into these boxes or into the electrical connectors, start a fire, and the last thing you want at 40,000 feet is a fire.
Barnett says so-called foreign object debris is common when planes are built, but employees are expected to clean up after themselves. The Times reports in 2017, the FAA ordered the metal shavings to be removed from planes before delivery, and that Boeing determined that the issue does not present a flight safety issue.
NBC's Gabe Gutierrez reporting Boeing says the Times piece paints a skewed and inaccurate picture of the program. Consumer and Business News, Joe McConnell, NBC News Radio.
You'll have to wait a little longer to get your hands on Samsung's foldable phone. Galaxy Fold was due out this week, but the Wall Street Journal is saying that debut will now not happen until sometime in May. Fold had some much publicized issues over the past few weeks, including problems with the display, casting doubt on the durability of Samsung's $2,000 foldable phone. Zillow is out with 3D home tours in the U.S. and Canada. Prospective homebuyers can now get 360-degree panoramas of rooms and a seamless tour of a house through the real estate company's iOS app. Realtors can add 3D tours to their listings for free, and they can take as little as 15 to 20 minutes to produce. You can now get your new Tesla Model 3 in days, not weeks. Electric says the automaker has made its entire inventory of Model 3 vehicles available for browsing online, and by choosing one of their pre-configured cars instead of customizing your own, you can get it immediately. Also online, you have a chance to get a great deal on a Tesla previously used as a floor or test drive model. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
A San Antonio baby born without skin from the neck down is doing a lot better after his first surgery in Houston. 3-month-old Jabari Gray is in stable condition at Texas Children's Hospital. At birth, Jabari was put on life support because his head, chin, and chest were fused together, making it hard for him to breathe. The FDA is giving final approval to the first generic nasal spray to treat opioid overdoses. Brian Shook has more.
Naloxone nasal spray, which has the brand name of Narcan, is a medicine used to help stop or reverse the effects of an opioid overdose being used primarily by police and EMS workers. The FDA also announced plans to review applications for similar generic products as well as plans to help create an over-the-counter product, but they hope the use of the nasal spray will provide more access as no medical training is required.
Health updates. Sarah Lee Kessler, NBC News Radio.
It's been a long road back for Gordon Hayward, but after missing all of last season with a gruesome leg injury, Hayward led the Boston Celtics to a 110-106 Game 4 win at the Indiana Pacers in a 4-game sweep of their Eastern Conference first-round series. Hayward's 20-point performance on 7 of 9 shooting and 3 of 3 from behind the arc was an especially sweet Easter Sunday outing as it came 20 miles from his hometown in Indiana.
Felt really good out there, and I thought tonight was a total team effort. Different points in the game, different guys stepped up, and to do it in front of friends and family was a lot of fun.
It's always fun to become the first team to advance to the second round of the NBA playoffs, and the Celtics are that. Elsewhere, the Warriors beat the Clippers 113-105 to take a 3-1 lead in that series. Klay Thompson scored 32 in 40 minutes for Golden State and says a dip in the Pacific Saturday helped get his game going. The Raptors stomped the Magic 107-85, and the Blazers silenced the Thunder 111-98. Toronto and Portland also hold 3-1 playoff series leads. Matt Stewart, NBC News Radio.
Sean Hannity on iHeartRadio.
All right, as we continue, investigative reporter and writer, executive vice president of The Hill, John Solomon, is with us. Let's go back now because let's get a big picture, the days, the weeks, the months ahead, what's coming.
Yeah, I think the biggest dynamic to see is watching the investigators now become the investigated. That is going to be the dynamic that will dominate the next 6 months. And that will occur on many fronts. It will occur in the intelligence community. It will occur with Attorney General Barr, who's doing his own assessment. It will occur with the Inspector General of the Justice Department. And I believe it will occur in both the House and the Senate. Even Republicans in the minority are starting to do some pretty remarkable things, digging into some of the issues. And even though they don't have committee power, they still have the power of their office. And I think you'll see House Republicans, Lindsey Graham, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who has a very powerful committee. I think you'll see between those 5 sectors a lot of accountability coming out and a lot of hard questions. And I think the biggest thing the President of the United States can do to help all of those gain transparency, declassify the documents that have been identified in those 5 buckets.
Well, and you want to remind people, I remind them often, but the way you say it is different. So maybe they'll hear it from you better than me.
Well, you've had it right from the beginning. So it's the FISA document. It's the Gang of 8 document.
FISA application. The Gang of 8 would expose the FBI acknowledging failure?
Yes, and showing the missteps. So when you read those 2 together, you sort of have the perfect compendium of what went wrong in the FBI. Then there are some emails that show how early on the FBI knew that there were problems with Christopher Steele as an informant. Remember, affirmatively, they told the court he was in good standing and they knew of no derogatory information. I don't think that declaration is going to turn to be true.
You know, I got to give props and kudos to you, and I can't mention every person, but there's maybe 20 or 30 of us that have been on this from day one, and we wouldn't be here, honestly, without, this is too now critical and crucial to the republic that we love, and if we don't solve these problems, it's going to happen again. Anyway, thank you so much, John Solomon. We'll see you tonight on Hannity, 9 Eastern, Fox News Channel. Quick break, right back. Democrat Mark Penn, a hard-hitting article about Mueller being done, and Democrats should be too, because Trump is no Nixon. He'll weigh in on the extremists now taking over the Democratic Party. Straight ahead.
Are you looking for a radio station near you that runs Sean Hannity? Well, you can locate it on our affiliate finder at Hannity.com.
NBC News Radio. I'm Tom Roberts. The The number of Americans among the nearly 300 dead in the Sri Lankan Easter Sunday bombings is up to 4. The Sri Lankan government says a radical Muslim group was responsible for 6 suicide bombings at Christian churches and luxury hotels. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says the U.S. is ready to help in any way it can.
And look forward to helping bring these individuals that are responsible to justice. And again, our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts are with the people.
Sri Lankan officials admit there were warnings, but they failed to act before yesterday's series of coordinated bombings. A spokesman adds that intelligence failures will be investigated. More information is being released on a deadly plane crash in south central Texas today. Officials say a twin-engine plane with 6 on board went down near Kerrville, and there were no survivors. The FAA and the NTSB are on the way to the scene and will lead the investigation. No word so far on the crash's cause. House Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah Cummings claims the Trump Organization is using a baseless lawsuit to block his request for financial documents. The Maryland Democrat released a statement today saying there is no valid legal basis to interfere with this duly authorized subpoena from Congress, adding he feels the suit is politically motivated. NBC reporter Kristen Welker says the Trump Organization doesn't see things that way.
The lawsuit says that Congressman Elijah Cummings is using his subpoena power in an improper way.
The U.S. is ending exemptions for countries that import Iranian oil. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the announcement this morning.
Today I'm announcing that we will no longer grant any exemptions. We're going to zero across the board.
The end of the waivers means countries who previously had permission to import Iranian oil will face sanctions. An Easter tradition is being renewed at the White House. The 141st annual Easter egg roll was held on the South Lawn today with President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump presiding. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Kanye West has a Coachella deal for you. 2 pairs of socks for $50. The rapper was selling the socks along with other church-themed merchandise at what he calls his Sunday service. It was held this Easter weekend at Coachella in the California desert. Social media jumped on the sale, with some upset that the socks, which read Jesus Walks and church socks, were being sold for such a high price. Meantime, Coachella 2019 is officially in the books. Singer Adele is separating from her husband, charity CEO Simon Konecki, after rumors of a rocky relationship. Adele's spokesperson confirmed over the weekend that Adele and Konecki have separated but are still committed to raising their son together lovingly. Sources say Adele and Konecki had reportedly been living separate lives for some time, and things just didn't work out. iHeartRadio's lineup for this year's Wango Tango has been announced. The show, hosted by Ryan Seacrest, includes Jonas Brothers, Halsey, 5 Seconds of Summer, and Zedd, just to name a few. It will take place June 1st at the Dignity Health Sports Park in Los Angeles. BTS is landing its 3rd #1 album in just 11 months. The Korean boy band's latest project, Map of the Soul Persona, has debuted at the top of the Billboard 200. That's entertainment. Lisa G., NBC News Radio.
iHeartRadio, truly the one app for everything you love. Or more accurately, everything your ears love. Thousands of radio stations, playlists for any mood. And now iHeartRadio is the #1 podcaster in the country. From award-winning podcasts like Stuff You Should Know and Disgraceland to big podcast hits like the Ron Burgundy Podcast, The Dropout, The Joe Rogan Experience, and a long list of true crime podcasts. It's easy to find your new obsession. The free iHeartRadio app. Your music, your stations, and #1 for podcasts.
iHeartRadio. Sean Hannity on iHeartRadio. you have the right to remain silent, and you might want to use it. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
You have all of this case of obstruction presented in the Mueller report, as you just stated. Some might ask, why haven't you opened an impeachment inquiry? Or, in fairness, is that what you're doing right now?
I don't think we're doing that. We may get to that. We may not. As I've said before, it is our job to go through all the evidence, to all the information we can get, to go where the evidence leads us.
Do you think this is impeachable?
Yeah, I do. I do think that this, if proven, which hasn't been proven yet, if proven, some of this would be impeachable, yes.
All right.
Obstruction of justice, if proven, would be impeachable.
And you're going to go about to see if you can prove it?
Well, we're going to see where the facts lead us.
The report is out. The partisan divide seems wide or even wider than ever. What happens now?
This document, the Mueller document, has now left us with a roadmap to go forward. I think he basically said to us as a Congress, it's up to you to take this further with regard to obstruction and other matters that might come up.
Well, already, Mr. Chairman, Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Maxine Waters, Julian Castro have said we should begin proceedings to impeach the president. Are you there yet?
I'm not there yet, but I can foresee that possibly coming.
I and my staff began to look very closely at this president early on. And when we looked at all of his allies and the people who were connected with him and with Putin and the Kremlin and with the oligarchs of Russia, we determined something was very wrong, and we dubbed them the Kremlin Clan. The Kremlin Clan, as identified, has been on my face page on Twitter for almost 2 years. We know who they are, and this report only confirms that. What more do we need to do? Okay, so if we cannot decide, if the Democrats cannot decide that they're going to move with impeachment, I guess they're going to go on with these investigations. How long are they going to go on with them? What more do they need to prove?
That's Nadler, Congressman Cummings, Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And, look at the headline say, Democrats may pursue impeachment against Donald Trump. Schiff, Dems may take up impeachment proceedings if it's the best thing for the country. Waters, enough information in the Mueller report to move forward with impeachment. If we do nothing after Mueller report, Trump is going to be emboldened. Another headline. And it gets on from there. There was a conspiracy TV MSNBC panel debating over the weekend the strategy on impeachment. It'd be a mistake to start the hearings right away, but we got to do it. Joy Reid badgering a Democratic a congressperson for not wanting to impeach Donald Trump. This is who they have now become. When is there ever, somebody tell me, an instance where they say, maybe we could work with the president, secure our border, lower the prices of prescription drugs like we have been. How many times has Dr. Josh been on this program of Atlas MD, and he gets his own negotiations with drug companies at 95% discounts, and concierge care for every American at price $50 a month for adults. It's unbelievable. You walk out of the doctor's office with your prescription, and he's duplicated that nearly 1,000 times. When are they going to talk about, how can we be energy independent? What do we do with the vast resources of energy? Is there anything the Democrats are offering that helps forgotten men and women that were so hurt during the Obama years? Anyway, there is one Democrat with a lot of courage in all of this, has a new piece in the Hill today. Mark Penn, his headline, Mueller's done, Democrats should be too, Trump is no Nixon. How much abuse do you get for saying what is so obvious that they're destroying the Democratic Party?
Well, I get a mix of everything. I've had people write me, even from the Watergate era, thanking me. So, look, I know it's a controversial viewpoint, but I was in impeachment in the middle of it in 98, working with President Clinton, and I saw how destructive these things are to the country. You want to have an election, have an election. You want to have an impeachment, you sure can't have one on the basis of this report.
What's amazing, Mark, is, and I said this in terms of Bill Clinton and the difference between him and Obama, and I felt like I was out there on a limb with the smallest twig hanging on a leaf that was left from last fall, and about to, Newt Gingrich told me if I keep pushing so hard and vetting Obama that I'm probably going to ruin my career, that I can't stop. It's who I am. And I concluded after Frank Marshall Davis, Alinsky, Acorn, community organizer, and Reverend Wright and Ayers and Dorn that Obama's going to be a radical ideologue, and he was. He never changed. Bill Clinton, after 2 years, Republicans take back Congress for the first time in 40, comes up with the era of big government is over and the end of welfare as we know it. He governed conservatively as a Democrat from that point on, or at least moderately, working with Newt Gingrich to solve problems.
Well, yeah, I was part of that effort, right? And we had welfare reform. We had a balanced budget. We had an immigration reform bill at the time. We had a lot. We did a lot of good. We said, look, let's put the country first. Good
a lot of good. Listen,
policies.
The last time we had a balanced budget was with Newt as Speaker and Clinton as President.
Yeah, that's true. Look,
right.
And Newt and the president would pound at each other all day, and they would go and negotiate all night.
And it worked. And the country was better off.
Correct.
So you see the headlines, you see the new Green Deal, you hear impeachment. They're still pushing collusion, for crying out loud, even though the Mueller report couldn't be any more clear. What does this do? Who wins this battle, if there even is a battle? I mean, Steny Hoyer's trying to pull back. Even Pelosi tried a little, but then she gets hammered from her left flank. I would argue that the radicals have taken over the Democratic Party. They win.
Well, look, Gingrich at the time went too far, and we gained seats in 98. And I think Democrats are on the path of going too far. They're too far because the Mueller report showed no collusion. And if it showed no collusion, how do you obstruct justice that wasn't going to happen? That, in fact, the injustice was the investigation itself. And I've seen how frustrated presidents get when they're investigated for things they did do, let alone for things they didn't do.
I love that whole thing on obstruction. Well, he said that I want to fire Mueller. This is ridiculous. This is a witch hunt. He said it all publicly. Or Rod Rosenstein is a bad guy. He needs to go. Or I hope General Flynn doesn't get in trouble. He never took any steps, and he had the authority himself to do all of that. He would have legally he could have fired Mueller.
Right. He had the constitutional authority to fire Mueller. And what did he actually do with Mueller? He
Nothing.
turned over more documents than we ever would have.
Never invoked executive privilege one time. Not once. Not one time.
So he did the same thing. He hit him during the day and with politics, and by night he cooperated fully, gave them full access. And, what did they find? That sometimes he got frustrated. Who wouldn't get frustrated? But he didn't step over any lines. He didn't shut down their investigation. He didn't pay hush money. There was none of the things that was done like Nixon did. This is absurd. This is a president who was continually frustrated that an investigation that should never have happened was plaguing his presidency over something that didn't happen. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it.
It's scary, actually. Now, I can tell you my last interview with the president, he was very clear that he will declassify key Russiagate documents. And from all of my sources, and I worked a lot of sources in the 2+ years this has been going on, I think you're pretty well aware this was a team effort. This was not just Sean Hannity. And we know that there's damning information in those FISA applications. I'll quote the Grassley-Graham memo. The bulk of information in the FISA applications came from that Hillary Clinton paid for Russian dossier with lies. And it was also disseminated to the public. And we also know that the fix was in. Even Page and Strzok threw it right on the desk of Loretta Lynch that they rigged the investigation into Hillary's email server and obvious obstruction of justice. When we get the Gang of Eight, those FISA applications, those 5 buckets that I always talk about, then there's going to be a new narrative in this country. You're keenly aware of it as well. And that's the abuse of power that took place and the effort to undermine a duly elected president.
Look, there were 3 things that caught my eye, right? I mean, first, when it came out that the dossier itself was really paid for through an Oppo research group that actually was in fact funded by the DNC and the Hillary campaign. So anyone would have said, hey, why are we using a document? It's not legitimate intelligence. Second, anybody should just read it. It's a joke when you read it.
It's a complete sham joke. If you just read actually the dossier.
It's not a joke, though. If you're, it's not a joke,
right? Which the struck page text, which said, you know what, the possibility of a conspiracy inside is real. The stuff that you had on was real. That there was more evidence for that than for the opposite. And any objective journalist should have seen that.
You know, I went on a tweet storm last night, and I don't have access to any social media. I haven't for a long time. So I have to ask my staff. I wrote it out and I sent it to them. I said, can you send this out in a series of tweets? And all the things that they didn't do, all the fact that they tried to unseat a duly elected president, that there was an insurance policy for such, the fact that the news media was so wrong so often, as we have pointed out, the fact that, all of these things happen and they get it wrong on Richard Jewell, Cambridge Police, UVA, Duke Lacrosse, Ferguson, Baltimore, vetting Obama, the Covington kids, Kavanaugh, I can go on forever. And this is the biggest epic fail ever by the news media. How does this fall out for them?
Well, it ranks up there with weapons of mass destruction. So it's look, in fact, I don't understand how the media hasn't said, look, all of these connections with Russia, we only looked at this campaign. We didn't look at everybody's connections. We didn't look at the Democrats' connections. We looked at these connections, and none of them led to anything that could remotely be called the collusion, and therefore the media should have, in effect, apologized. And frankly, it's incredible that it went, for any real observer of what Mueller was doing, he doesn't have a single prosecution based on that. He either has it on FARA registration, taxes, or process crimes related to his own investigation, without even a single person indicted for obstruction or for collusion. How are you then going to put this at the president's feet unless you think the president is a magician?
I think it's well said. All right, stay right there. More with Mark Penn, the former pollster for the Clintons. It's his article. Mueller's done. Democrats should be too. Trump is not Nixon. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of this program. Hey, don't forget our friends at the USCCA. Now, remember, they're there to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens, their Second Amendment rights. They're also there to help educate on safety and security when it comes to your Second Amendment. They also have their gun giveaway going on right now, one gun a day for responsible gun owners, and it's a different one at midnight every night. It all ends on April the 30th. You're running out of time. Take out your phone and just text the word PROTECT, PROTECT, to the number 87222. 17 chances to win. It's real simple. You get literally signed up the minute you send out that text. Text PROTECT, the word PROTECT, to 87222. And by the way, when you talk to our friends at the USCCA, ask about their gun safety rules. Ask about, how to be a responsible gun owner, and they'll pass on all that information to you. Take out your phone, text PROTECT, PROTECT, to the number 87222. Quick break, right back. We'll continue.
Final hour roundup is next. You do not want to miss it. And stay tuned for the final hour free-for-all on the Sean Hannity Show. Check out Sean live every weekday from 3 to 6 Eastern here on iHeartRadio.
From the Fox Sports Studios in Los Angeles, here's Dan Byer.
We start in the NBA where the Bucks and Pistons played tonight in Detroit. Milwaukee looking for the sweep as they are up 3-0 in the best-of-7 series. They tip at 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight. Rockets and Jazz play in Salt Lake. That's at 10:30 Eastern time tonight. Rockets are up 3-0 in the series. It's Game 4 of their Western Conference first-round matchup. 76ers center Joel Embiid wouldn't say if he'll play at Game 5 against the Nets tomorrow because of his sore knee. Nets center Ed Davis is questionable for the game because of an ankle injury. The NBA did release the last 2-minute report from Saturday's Game 4 between the Nets and Sixers, and Brooklyn may not want to hear this. Referees should have called a foul on Sixers center Tobias Harris on a play where Nets center Jared Allen turned the ball over in the final seconds with the Nets down 2. The Buffalo Bills have signed former Jaguars running back TJ Yeldon to a contract, while Redskins senior vice president Doug Williams says they still may consider taking a quarterback at 15th overall in the draft, despite trading for Case Keenum this offseason.
Home sales might be back to their downward trend after a huge spike up in February. Sales of existing homes dropped about 5% in March, and the Realtors Association says they were 5.5% lower than March of last year. The association's chief economist says the market is underperforming its potential considering lower interest rates, but low inventory is still driving up prices, and it's taking about 3 months longer to sell a house on average than a year ago. The United States is ending its waiver of sanctions on countries that buy oil from Iran, and that's driving up oil prices even more. Correspondent Bill Zimfer with the latest.
The Trump administration granted waivers to China, India, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Turkey, Italy, and Greece after reimposing sanctions on Iranian oil exports last November. Now those waivers are ending in early May. It remains to be seen how those countries, in particular China, will react. China is the number one buyer of oil from Iran. Meanwhile, world oil prices are up on the news to their highest level since last year. Bill Zimfer, NBC News Radio.
Boeing is now facing allegations that it's done a shoddy job building its 787 Dreamliners at its Charleston, South Carolina factory. A New York Times investigation details complaints about all kinds of debris workers left behind. One example, says retired Boeing quality manager John Barnett, metal shavings that were left dangling over crucial wiring inside planes, creating a safety issue.
Is over time, these metal shavings are going to migrate down into these boxes or into the electrical connectors, start a fire, and the last thing you want at 40,000 feet of fire.
Barnett says so-called foreign object debris is common when planes are built, but employees are expected to clean up after themselves. The Times reports in 2017, the FAA ordered the metal shavings to be removed from planes before delivery, and that Boeing determined that the issue does not present a flight safety issue.
NBC's Gabe Gutierrez reporting Boeing says the Times piece paints a skewed and inaccurate picture of the program. Consumer and Business News, Joe McConnell, NBC News Radio.
Sean Hannity on iHeartRadio.
As we continue, Mark Penn, former Clinton pollster, is with us. Mueller's done. Democrats should be too. Trump is no Nixon, but it's not going to happen. Now, what I imagine is going to happen at some point, based on some of the closed-door testimony that we got, especially on the Clinton email investigation, and I don't know where you stand. The evidence is overwhelming and incontrovertible. She had top-secret classified information on a private server. The law is clear, 18 U.S.C. 793, but Strzok and Page referred to the fix being in on that investigation. Also, that would be an underlying crime. Then if you want real obstruction, well, there was a real intent when you delete 33,000 subpoenaed emails. You bleach bit your hard drive to make it clean, and it makes it unrecoverable, and have an aide bust up your devices in case there's any evidence on that. So that would be intent. Then you have the whole FISA abuse scandal, and then an attempt to undo a duly elected president. Do you see all of these things now coming to light, and isn't it in the country's best interest to get to the bottom of all of it?
Well, as someone who worked for the Clinton, I stay away from commenting directly on people whom I respect and I feel did a lot of good for the country. I don't think.
Let me ask you another way. If you deleted 33,000 subpoenaed emails,
you tried to get me to do that.
No. If you deleted 33,000 subpoenaed emails, acid washed your hard drive with bleach bit, had an aide bust up your phones and Blackberries, do you think you'd be in trouble?
Well, let me put it this way. You don't delete emails unless you really need to, especially if they're under congressional subpoena as a general rule. I just don't think...
I'm going to be nice and just let that pass, by the way. Go ahead.
I don't think they're going to go back to there. I think the focus here is going to be on the FBI, the CIA, the Obama administration, the listening in, the unmasking, the trick that was done against Flynn by Sally Yates.
That was terrible.
I think that's where things are going to center, and I think it is the most explosive scandal, really, it's certainly in my lifetime in American history.
You're on the right side of history. It is the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal we've ever seen. They tried to rig an election. They saved one candidate from indictment. Then they tried to undo an election. And they knew what they were doing. And unfortunately for those involved, there's the evidence that is coming that proves it all. And we already have a lot of it. Mark Penn, thank you. Appreciate it. And you can thank me later for saying, okay, that's a good enough answer. I understand. All right, when we come back, News Roundup, Information Overload Hour. We had the Sri Lanka bombings over the weekend. Very scary. And we have now, 24 suspects in custody. The attack appears to have been carried out by suicide bombers. We'll get an official update straight ahead.
Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
The special counsel confirmed that the Russian government sponsored efforts to illegally interfere with the 2016 presidential election, but did not find that the Trump campaign or other Americans colluded in those efforts.
I'm having a good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction. There never was, by the way, and there never will be.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America. Stay right here for our final news roundup and information overload.
What was supposed to be a joyful Easter Sunday was marred by a horrific wave of Islamic radical terror, bloodshed. Heartbreaking that a country which has strived so hard for peace in recent years has been targeted by these terrorists. We mourn the loved ones of the victims, some of whom we can confirm were indeed U.S. citizens. This is America's fight, too. I spoke with the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka this morning, And our embassy and other parts of the U.S. government are offering all possible assistance to Americans and the Sri Lankan government alike. We urge that any evildoers be brought to justice expeditiously, and America is prepared to support that. We also stand with the millions of Sri Lankans who support the freedom of their fellow citizens to worship as they please. We take confidence in knowing that not even atrocities like this one will deter them from respecting religious freedom. Today, our nation grieves with the people of Sri Lanka, and we stand committed, resolved to confront terrorism together.
All right, that's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. News Roundup Information Overload Hour. Nearly 300 people killed in the Sri Lanka attacks over the weekend. And we know it started at 8:45 a.m. This is Easter Sunday morning. Bombs tearing apart 3 separate churches, 3 separate hotels. There was another explosion at a housing complex. U.S. Embassy confirmed at least 4 U.S. citizens killed out of the nearly 300. Sri Lankan police now have 24 suspects in custody. It appears that they have carried out suicide bombs, but on top of that, and the 24 people in custody, police said they discovered 87 detonators apparently abandoned at a private bus stand in the capital, and the government has ordered round-the-clock security at all churches. We know no claim of responsibility. Wall Street Journal points out, and by the way, whenever you see multiple attacks, it has the fingerprint of Islamic militants. Sri Lanka points to Islamic militants in this Easter bombing attack, themselves. And we do have apparently some information that would support or suggest an international network is involved in this, and officials suggesting that there was some advanced knowledge of a terror plot in Sri Lanka that intelligence may have ignored. Why, I don't know. Anyway, it is just devastating. And yeah, this is our fight. It's always going to be our fight. Unfortunately for the entire world, it's the U.S. that beats back fascism and communism and Nazism and Imperial Japan, and now radical Islamists that want to kill innocent people. We've seen it happen in this country too often. 3,000 people, 9/11. We had many attacks warning us beforehand. You had the embassy bombings in Kenya, Tanzania. People forget about it. The USS Cole, the first Trade Center bombing, all as a lead up to 9/11, 2001. And remember, the 9/11 report said they were at war with us. We were not at war with them. We didn't take it seriously enough. Anyway, joining us, Patrick Poole. He is the national security correspondent for PJ Media. Matthew Hyman is with us, senior fellow, associate director for global studies at the National Security Institute at George Mason University's Antonin Scalia Law School. Thank you both. Patrick, let's start with the latest and what we know, as we're pretty convinced of who's responsible for this, but the number of church bombings around the globe, especially Christian churches. We had the mosque incident in New Zealand, but the number of Christian churches is astronomical at this point.
Yeah, Sean, and in fact,
and synagogues, I might add too. Yeah,
because we have Orthodox Easter coming up this coming weekend. They follow a week behind this year, and the Coptic Orthodox in Egypt, which is the largest population of Christians in the Middle East. Half the Christians live in Egypt. And just 2 years ago, they suffered 2 suicide bombings at churches, including one targeting Pope Tadros, the head of the Coptic Church, on Palm Sunday. So there's a lot of concern about something happened in Egypt or, in Syria, where the Eastern Orthodox churches are coming up on Easter. And Sean, it's remarkable how horrific this bombing was, but it could have been worse because we found out that a 6-foot pipe bomb had been discovered unexploded at the airport. And then this morning they were defusing a bomb inside a van parked outside a church in Colombo, and the bomb exploded as they were defusing it. No one was injured. But this could have been even more worse than what it is.
Well, that's even more chilling. Yeah, I mean, the bus stop in particular. Matthew, let's get your take on it.
Well, I think this also points out as you noted in your lead up to the story, Sean, the dysfunction that may well exist in the Sri Lankan government in terms of sharing intelligence and information between intelligence organizations, police organizations, and other security groups. Because, as you noted, the news reports discuss this intelligence being available to those folks over a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it doesn't look like much action was taken. And so, obviously a very unfortunate circumstance, especially when you have this many deaths and this many injuries as a result. I think the other thing that comes out of this story is that given that they are pointing to this organization, which is called National Tawhid Jamaat, which is apparently a local radical Islamist organization in Sri Lanka, there's a strong sense that either Al-Qaeda or Islamic State must be connected to it, because the scale and sophistication of these attacks is quite remarkable. To pull off, multiple sites, coordinated attacks. It takes a certain amount of organization and logistics.
But I know you've also been monitoring the attacks on churches and synagogues around the world, and it seems like exponentially now in the last year and a half or so, these attacks have gone way up.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we're in this cycle where houses of worship, whether you're talking about the horrible attacks against the mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, or the attacks against Christian and Catholic churches around the world, that seems to be the method of attack right now, and it's a horrific circumstance.
Yeah, and I know, Patrick, you as well. This is what you do. You've been following it. How much has it grown?
Well, we've seen these attacks during Christian holidays, going back to 2012 and Boko Haram in Nigeria. When the Obama administration told Congress that, this isn't religious inspired violence when they're bombing churches on Easter. And we've seen it in Nigeria, Kenya, Pakistan, Egypt, Philippines, a whole series of these bombings. And Sean, one of the important things, and I'm sure that investigators internationally, not just in Sri Lanka, are looking at, is that this group, this National Tawhid Jamaat, also included, as you and I've talked about previously, this group included ISIS guys who had returned from Syria. And in fact, one of the guys, Zahran Hashim, who's been identified, he had active Facebook account where he was posting pro-ISIS literature literally for years, which goes to the whole intelligence failure question, which they're going to have to answer.
Well, we all get that, and I guess, we've had this happen before, but from my understanding is, we have intelligence sharing, again, even with countries maybe we weren't as closely aligned with over the years, like we've never had before. The sharing of intelligence, supposedly we were to fix the intelligence in our country. I still can't for the life of me, Patrick, understand 30 years of the ability of hackers to get into our government business, and it still happens that we haven't built a defense strong enough yet to prevent it. That to me is a huge national security risk. But it just sounds too much like 9/11. It's like they're at war with us. They're doing all these things and we're not. Or maybe it's just that we have to get it right every time, and it's hard.
Well, one other thing that we've talked about previously are these long series of lone wolf attacks. I mean, in virtually all these international terrorism incidents, you see that law enforcement had most of these individuals on their radar beforehand, and no one's really willing to address that issue, even here in the United States. That law enforcement gets this information and the ability to process it and to be able to accurately gauge the level of threat has just been consistently bad across the board.
Well, and I mean, I guess, Matthew, you would think, like, for example, we talk about the ISIS caliphate. I mean, all of that land that they had taken in Syria is gone. They have been literally shoved into the ground, and a lot of it took a lot of intelligence and a lot of bombs to take out those people that were responsible. We went right back to the first town that they had captured, and we moved them out. They're gone or dead. And it seems worldwide these networks still keep popping up, or you have the lone wolf syndrome. But in this case, it seems like a lot of sophisticated plotting, scheming, and planning went on here.
Well, it certainly appears that way, and I think the way you just articulated what happened with the geography in Syria and in Western Iraq is right, in the sense that the Islamic State doesn't control that geography, and the people that controlled it are either gone or they're dead. Now, the people that are gone have either returned home or they are still, in spider holes, hanging out, inspiring others to engage in these acts and creating networks that allow these acts to come to fruition. And so that's the problem, is the ideology is still around. There are people that still adhere to this view of the world and willing to support local organizations like the one in Sri Lanka in terms of pulling off these attacks, which means our intelligence functions have to be, as you noted, almost perfect in terms of stopping every one of these, and that's a tough task.
Well, it's like, after 9/11, we have to be right every time. They obviously, they just have to, get that one chance. Patrick, go back to 9/11 and go back to post 9/11. Go back to, I know we had a big debate in the country over enhanced interrogation techniques. People think everybody was waterboarded. In fact, there were only 3 people. One of them was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And one of the great discoveries was that even though bin Laden, as evil as he was, wasn't stupid. And by that, we learned about the courier, that he didn't use any internet. He didn't use any computers of any kind, that he communicated only through that courier. We got to the courier. We found bin Laden.
Well, Sean, going back even further to the Afghan jihad, where you had the so-called Arab Afghans showing up, and after the conflict, they ended up basically creating the international network we now know as Al-Qaeda. Well, I think we're going to see the same function now with the demise of ISIS in Syria and Iraq, is that a lot of these guys have just kind of spread out all over. We have ISIS guys that the FBI knows about who are already back in the United States. Same thing in Canada. And a lot of Western countries are grappling with, how do we handle these guys? Because in a lot of cases, you don't have the evidence to be able to convict them in court. What do you do? And, there's, in fact, there was a report in the Sunday Times yesterday in the UK where they've discovered information about guys who are ISIS guys who are moving people in and out of Europe. So this is going to be an ongoing problem, and these places of worship are going to continue to be perceived by ISIS as targets of opportunity, and it's going to be a serious ongoing problem.
Well, that I agree with. Stay right there, and we'll wrap things up. And what we think the likely outcome is in all of this, and whether we're going to get to the bottom of this coordination. Terrible attacks, nearly 300 killed over the weekend. Church bombings, hotel bombings in Sri Lanka. More with Patrick Poole and Matthew Hyman as we continue on the other side. Then we'll get your calls in at the bottom of the half hour. Hey, listen, I've known these folks at Simply Safe a long time. They only had 6 employees. Now they have over 1,000. They have taken the home security business and turned it upside down. Everything that was done wrong, they now have a complete system that does it right. In other words, you don't pay for installation. Your walls aren't chipped apart. Everything that they have done technology-wise, that's why they're now number 1 in the industry. They're CNET Editor's Choice, wire cutters, top pick, the people that know. And you don't have to sign a contract with big monthly fees that you can never get out of. You don't pay for installation, and you can even take the system to a place when you move. What if an intruder comes through a window, not protected by maybe a gadget you bought or an inferior system? Simply Safe offers 24/7, around-the-clock professional monitoring and police dispatch. They cover every door, every window in your home. No wires, small sensors. By the way, if the Wi-Fi goes down, power goes out, it's still working. There's no contract, installation, or hidden fees. $15 a month, that's it. Protect your home and family. Go to simplysafehannity.com. They're now protecting millions of us. Simplysafehannity.com for 10% off your system. Simplysafehannity.com.
While the mainstream media is asleep at the wheel, Hannity Watch is on the job, bringing you the news news no one else can. Sean Hannity.
American way. Of course, the next best thing to a seat in the stands is a seat in front of a 19-inch RCA Victor television. One more day to Labor Day weekend, the traditional occasion for tasty outdoor barbecues or picnics.
Agree with all the obstacles and with all the enemies who are between me and
Times Square, 42nd Street.
Transfer is available. 1